I swear to you, I did not miss Random Review on Monday because I was out playing Pokemon Go. In spite of what my Twitter feed said. Never mind that. I wasn't. I'm busy with MetroCon stuff. I've still got a hotel thing to readjust. I still have planning to do. I still have interview cards to print. There's a lot to these convention trips of mine. So I will try to get back to that as soon as possible. However, that is then. This is now. And what is now is a toy from back then. Somewhere around there. This is Cybertron Landmine. Yes, it's the same landmine from Energon, at least that's what Hasbro says, in spite of the fact that he's lost his Mad Max crazy kind of destruction mode, and it's been reduced to what I'm sure a lot of people would call a bulldozer, but it's actually a front loader. Hey, I did some vehicle research. Amazing. As you can see, he is cast in a very nice deep shade of yellow. It was more to the marigold rather than the annoying yellow that they typically put on something like, say, Bumblebee. It's the kind of yellow that people will often bark at me because it looks orange. Oh, trust me, I'm the one holding it. It's definitely yellow. It does also have some brown plastic molded in, gives it more of a earth tone look, but he also has this kind of a metallic-y blue shade of plastic. It's mostly gray, a little bit of blue. It's a nice kind of construction vehicle, kind of heavy machine color. Black for the wheels, of course. And then you've got paint apps, which includes red, a little bit here on the side to break up the yellow, and as well on the scoop itself, which is good. You can see little bits of airbrushing, which actually has a whole bunch of scratching to it. It gives the impression that the metal here is really worn, and that yellow paint job, the paint job that the actual vehicle would have, is starting to wear away and show the metal underneath. That's a really, really good touch on Hasbro's part. Hasbro and Takara. Bravo. It's on the bottom side, too. That's attention to detail they usually don't pay to these things anymore. You also have the lights up top, which have been done up in orange. The little signals up here, as well as the floodlights. And then there is the fully painted Autobot sigil right there on top. You can also see some burgundy on the windshields on the sides. And then toward the back, you do have this, it looks like black, but from here it looks like a super dark blue. What is pretty obviously a missile launcher, isn't it? Yeah, so I'm not sure what it's doing in this vehicle mode. It's trying to integrate. You can see the smokestacks here, which I really like that detail. I really like that, little touches like that. It does have its own kind of exhaust pipes up top. So it looks like it's trying to be something. It looks like the driver really hates the smell of diesel fuel and built some custom pipe to vent it all as far away from him as possible. But that's just speculation on my part. No, it looks better without it. Of course, what are you gonna do? Like, who's chasing one of these down the road and having so much trouble that, like, is he really like the fastest thing on the road and needs something like that to keep people off his back? It's a little silly. But then again, it's a toy. Hey, they are silly. Speaking of silly, let's actually show you what this thing does for a Cyberkey gimmick. Now, unlike a lot of these Cyberkey gimmicks, this one takes some prep work. You actually do have to flip the rear wheels up in order to position everything. Don't worry, he has little wheels underneath to keep him balanced and rolling. What also is weird is the fact that the tires themselves are the housing for the Cyberkey gimmick. Cyberkey in this case being the Earth key, nice blue, rather simple design compared to some of the others. DR94 on the back. He is the Doctor from 1994. No, don't trust me, he is. We insert the key and nothing happens. It doesn't actually go in and spring load something that, like they normally do. Instead, you have to give it an actual turn, like it's an actual key, in order to reveal little mini blades that come out of the wheels' centers, which by itself is kind of strange, but the strange part is the key really doesn't trip anything, it doesn't activate anything, so you can go in with, like, a dime, for instance, and get the exact same result. Anything that fits in there. If you have, like, really strong nails, you could probably even do it just with your fingers. So it's a little bit disappointing. Like, as a Cyberkey gimmick goes, It's a little underwhelming just because the key does not feel like it's a really necessary part. It's great if you tend to lose keys, but it does kind of detract from the whole style, the whole theme of the show and the theme of the toy line. Now, for added bonuses, there are rubber wheels here that will actually make contact with these rear wheels and spin them around with this little thumb wheel, which means you do get kind of a spinning death blade motion for anything that once again wanders into his rear. So I guess this is the point where like you get really good at driving backwards into opponents, I guess, or pretend it's a mask vehicle and this is actually like it's like little helicopter blades that let them fly around. Flying earth movers. It's going to be a thing one day. Probably not, but we can dream. Alright, let me reset this. We'll get these back in. And then we can go to robot mode, which that's part of transformation anyway, so we can just continue from there. I'm going to raise this up, and this is the part I will mention. I do like when they actually have the forethought to actually make the scoops on these things liftable. Sometimes they kind of skip over that, and it's a wee bit disappointing. But here, it's actually the robot mode arms, so plenty of reason to allow that to work. And we're going to use it now to get the arms out and separate them like so. From there, the legs flip forward, rotate these wheels down, and then flip out both sides of the feet. Nice, wide foot base. From here, I'm going to rotate these little blue pieces down, which is going to make his crotch appear. Never thought I'd say that when describing a Transformer toy. Alright, so that out of the way, we flip that forward, align these bucket halves however you like. All that flips down onto his back like so, and from there, smokestacks flip out and then flip to the shoulders. And that gives us our Cybertron Landmine in robot mode. Now, often when I talk about these toys, I mention how clean a robot looks, and that refers to how well the vehicle mode integrates into the robot mode, how much you can tell that, it's a robot with, a transformation, but, with a clean Transformer, all the vehicle parts have a logical place to go. They either hide away completely out of sight, or they integrate themselves enough into the robot to make some kind of good, convincing look that, yeah, that looks totally intentional, like that's supposed to be here. Landmine is not a clean Transformer, which we're going to get into quite a bit. First off, we're going to take a look at the head. There is some similarity to the Energon character, though it's not a whole lot, and, in Japan, he was viewed as a completely different character. Probably rightfully so. They do feel vastly different, especially if you actually watch the show and get the personalities of them. What little personality they let Landmine have in Energon. But more to the point, he does have this very heavy-looking head. He does look like a big, beefy worker-type robot. So that pretty much plays to his character very well. That I agree with. I like the head design. From here, we can see a lot more brown has been added, which breaks up a lot of the yellow. And the yellow itself is not nearly as dominant as it was in vehicle mode, and that's a really good thing. It's kind of a visual element of transformation that gets lost on some Transformers these days. I do like the added amounts of blue as well to kind of give him a little bit more color variety going on, and it still keeps in those heavy machinery tones that he's going for. Proportionally, he does stand up pretty well. Big bulky thighs and legs. Arms a little bit thin for what I would call, for a character that's supposed to be like this big bruiser type, but he does pull it off well enough. Of course, the big downside to this is just how much of the vehicle mode is hanging off. He does still have these big scoops hanging off of his arms as just big chunks of kibble. The wheels on the legs I can kind of forgive. The paneling does help kind of disguise it and make it part of the leg, but he also does have this huge backpack of wheel that really does not have a whole lot to do. This is one of the reasons, since this is all gimmick engineering in here, this is one of the Cybertron toys that is actually kind of intruded upon by his gimmick. And while the gimmick does stand as something unique, as we've explained, it doesn't work out all that well, all things considered. Still, I don't mind the look of the robot mode. He does, at the very least, carry this well enough, and your imagination can play and actually let these become, scoop weapons or something like that if you actually do want to use it that way. It's your toy. Use it however you want. But for the most part, I do kind of find it a little bit sloppy compared to a lot of the other toys in the line that usually did a much better job at integrating everything together and creating a smooth transformer out of a big vehicle. For articulation, we do have a rotation in the neck. We have 2 joints creating a universal motion in the shoulder. Always appreciated. Elbows are ball jointed, so full range of rotation and bend to the 90 degree. Nothing in the wrist unless you count the transformation hinge, bending it inward. Hips are ball jointed and have a nice range of motion that you wouldn't expect out of a burly guy like this. A little bit of restriction to the outside if it isn't bent in some way, but even a slight bend to the front or the back does allow a full range. You do have a rotation just below the knee. The knee itself goes to 90 degrees. And that's pretty much it. You get in and out hinges on the feet, but that's negligible in use. No waist rotation and nothing like no fine tuning or extra ball joints or anything, but for Cybertron, he stands up pretty well. He's got enough articulation to get some interesting poses in, and nothing of it feels like out of place or none of it feels cheap. Like all the joints are nice and solid, so that works out pretty well. And hey, of course, he does have his actual gun, which of course the missile does launch. I'm not going to because I kind of lost one of the recent ones that fired off on camera. It's a unique shape, at least. I will give it that. And then, of course, the Cyberkey gimmick still works here, though it's a little bit strange now because you have to flip up this big back piece in order to actually make it work. And then even when you do, and you actually get the blades back out here again, there's not a whole lot you're going to do with them. There's a reason they use this as like a tornado attack in the show, because as a physical weapon, it does not quite work in this mode anymore. So it's another reason why I'm not too big on the gimmick on this figure, because aside from being intrusive, and it's always strangely placed for what it's going for. But that, my friends, is Cybertron Landmine. As a figure himself, he's fairly solid, but I don't think he stands quite to the high standards I usually set for Cybertron. Does have a lot of kibble going on in robot mode, and he does have a gimmick that does intrude upon how good he stands as an action figure. That said, he does well enough with what he's given. I would probably put him somewhere in the middle. He's got some flaws to him, but he's also got plenty of good points too. He's about average for your Unicron trilogy figures.